On today's show, the Hawk Zone Rundown, we're recapping the last few days of the draft down in Detroit and obviously touching on Seahawks. And we're going to look at round 1 through 7, break it down for you guys, and kind of give you guys our overall grade. Obviously, QB has been a narrative that we've been talking about for the last couple of months leading into this draft. And the Seahawks walked away without one. They pick one up in UDFA's, but as far as the draft, we were kind of anticipating things. Looks like they're set moving forward right now with Gino and Sam. So we'll touch on that, and and then we'll just touch on some of the UDFA's that Seattle signed here right after the draft. So Bryce, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, not much. Just looking over who we're bringing in for rookie minicamp and the UDFAs we got and going through all the other Seahawk podcasters and stuff, kind of views of the draft and whatnot, and if they align with how I feel the team did and whatnot. So, yeah, man, overall, having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it was exciting. You gotta love the draft. It was a really exciting draft. So we're gonna touch on all that on the other side.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. What a run! Marshawn Lynch, get off me!
DK. Hey, it's Josh Harris with Seattle Seahawks.
That's the result you're gonna get.
This offense, just in general. I mean, you had
To
a
me,
guy
just
like
watching
that.
his film, he seems more of a back.
Just the
that-
presence he's got in that pocket, the way he throws the football. Rust days, man. All the scrutiny that line was under.
This Monday night's big.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Bryce, man, what a draft. Now you look at it, obviously first round we had number 16. We went back and forth for a long time. Are they going to stick and pick? Are they going to trade down? The consensus was, talking with you and I and a lot of guys that we've had on the show. I think the consensus, the majority was saying, yeah, you know what? Because of that gap, 1681, more than likely we are going to trade back, accumulate some stuff, and you're still gonna be some value little later on that first round. We end up sticking and picking. We get a guy we feel is a blue chipper, and then we waited all the way to 81 and got a pretty good player there too. Let's talk about the first, how you saw it play out. Were you surprised with the stick and pick? Obviously, Byron Murphy was sitting there, and obviously, we both love that pick. What were your thoughts as far as sticking and picking, and then sticking all the way to 81 as well?
Well, honestly, when the way the draft went there with the 14 offensive players off the board, bang, 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 and the 6 quarterbacks that went, that's kind of something we had touched on where some top 10 talent was going to drop because of that whole 6 quarterbacks going, right? Some guys that would normally go higher up in the draft when it's not as a QB heavy draft in that first round probably would have been. So I don't think if there had been like, say, 3 quarterbacks this year, I don't think we get Byron Murphy. I think someone else picks him up, maybe like in Atlanta or some who took Michael Penix, obviously, but they're a team that I thought was going to take Byron Murphy because I think he fit a need for them.
Right.
So then when it came down to it, and I'm sitting there and like Fatani was still on the board, Byron Murphy, Johnny Newton was still there. I was kind of like we hadn't mocked Murphy because he was usually gone in most of our mocks before pick 16. So I had loved him. I thought, he was, in my opinion, better than Sweat. He's more versatile. He's so quick off the ball. So when he was sitting there, I'm like, I think you got to stay. Like, you can't, like, if you trade back, you lose out on him because how far are you dropping? You're not going to get someone else is going to jump up and they go, hey, Byron Murphy's there. I'm going to grab him right now. He's going to make an immediate impact because he's a guy that you plug and play now. And if you're getting a plug and play guy at pick 16, that's huge. And I look at him going in there, and I think he goes in right beside, Leonard Williams and Draymond Jones.
Yeah.
And, you think of that, third and long pass rush now. When you've got him, Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Boy Mafe, Chenna Nwosu out on the edges, like that's a fearsome unit. Like I honestly think Seattle in some respects now has the top 2 D tackles in the NFC West.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and I think like you said, you if you trade down, you're basically saying, we're done with Byron Murphy because he's gonna go. I mean, he could have went the very next pick or whatever, right? So you see a guy like that, like you said, blue chipper, and you just got to grab him. Like you said, now it's like you have a piece to sit right beside Leonard Williams and Draymond. And we got to remember that we got this defensive minded head coach and just, get the trenches going, right? Like how often, we talk O-line, but how much have we been talking about, man, we gotta have a fierce interior D line. And obviously we saw how bad we were against the run. I mean, that was a massive need, but we weren't reaching, you know what I mean? That's what I liked about it. It wasn't like, oh, we gotta reach for a guy because this is a need. This guy is like a plug and play potential blue chip guy, and he just fell to you. You're right. Like you almost had no choice there. Even if you're like, okay, we could get some value later. But guys like this, like you said, 16. It's not like you're sitting at pick 8 or 9. In the top 10, like 16. We talked about, man, like that was sort of like a weird spot. Like when we were talking even a couple months ago, talking like pre-draft stuff, we were like, man, 16, kind of like you're in such a tough spot at 16. You know what I mean? But it turns out, like you said, when 6 of the first 12 picks are QBs, now all of a sudden all these guys get pushed, and now it feels like a top 8 pick. And so it's just the way the draft fell, and how QB heavy, not to mention how offensive heavy it got. It was like, here's this guy that's just not usually going to happen at 16.
No, it's not. And that's why I think they did what they did. And they like they said, there was opportunities to trade down. But
Yeah,
you have to value and weigh that as in, okay, if we trade down and accumulate picks, are we going to get a player of Byron Murphy's caliber sitting there at pick? I don't know. Say they traded with the Packers like we'd done in the past, pick 25. Like, who did the Packers pick at that range? Who was there? Like, they took an offensive tackle, and
right.
it was kind of like, okay, like, is that like you miss out on Fatanu at that point? You miss out on a couple other guys. Like maybe you take Newton there instead. But no, I honestly think this, to me, this first round of this draft, when that happened, I went for once, and this is something I talked with Dan Vians about.
Right.
The anxiety of, oh, what are we going to pick? What guy are we not going to know anything about that they're going to now take that's traitsy or something?
Right.
The Seahawks the last few years, I'd say the last 3 drafts, have really gone away from that and gone with, we're going to get guys that are going to come in and impact us right away. Like Devin Witherspoon, JSN, Byron Murphy, we think is going to do that. Charles Cross. Like they've gone out and got guys that are already established coming out of college. And that's where I think the draft for Seattle is now changed. Like I used to remember seeing Seattle drafts with Pete Carroll where it was like, oh, we're a C- grade, or we're an F grade, or we're this, like, minus the 2012 group that they give the F grade to at that time. But, you look at a lot of the, the Malik McDowell year. We drafted all these guys, but none of it really ended up, no one's on the roster still. Our best pick was in the 7th round, which was Chris Carson.
Oh my God.
Like, that's where for me, I was like, I really like this draft class, and I really think, and the other thing we got to account for too is there's 2 picks in here that were players that are already on our roster.
Right, exactly. We're going to touch on that.
Yeah,
we're going to touch on that in a second. I want to bring something up because we're going to go down the draft because obviously the number 8 and the next pick after that was a great pick as well. But the narrative has been quarterback, right? You and me, that was like every second show is like, are they taking a quarterback? Are they, when that Sam Howell comes into play? Okay, they're off quarterback. Then Penix has an amazing pro day. Okay, now are they back? Do they have interest with Ryan Grubb's connection? What did you hear about how real that was about them trying to move up in the draft to take Penix? Because I've heard some mixed things. What do you hear, and what did you believe? And do you think there was much to the Penix, situation there?
So the night of, obviously, after the draft finished, we saw the James Palmer tweet come out. James Palmer, formerly of NFL Network, tweet out that the Saints, I think the Raiders and the Seahawks were all trying to trade up into the top 10 to get Penix. Following day, like you said, there were some mixed things. I've talked to a few people, a few different individuals that were kind of connected to it. It's a bunch of bogus. The Seahawks weren't trading up into the top 10 to go get Michael Penix. They didn't have the draft capital or the ability to do it. Like, again, when I mentioned it and asked a few people, it was, well, they're going to have to give up an asset as well on top of draft capital. So
Right.
that could have potentially been DK. Are you really comfortable moving up? And then say you move up to Atlanta's pick 8, but pick 7, someone takes Penix in front of you. Like you would have had to move up if you wanted to be 100% concrete you were going to get it. You needed to get to pick 4. You weren't going to get to Arizona's pick 4. You weren't going to see that trade happen. So no, and then like other people have come out and said the same thing, that it was not true. Michael Sean Dugar from the Athletics come out and said, there was no, concrete evidence to this at all. Like this is kind of bogus. Same with Curtis Crabtree, a whole bunch of other people. And there's people I talked to that said, yeah, no, this was not a reality for Seattle.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking at and that's what I tend to believe. Because like you said, you got to be like, and that's the thing, even if it was true, like you didn't even think that Atlanta was really on the radar for Penix, of course, because of the Kirk Cousins situation and some of the other things they might have been looking at. So you would have had to give up so much for a player that, I don't know, man. Like I really like Penix, but I mean, there's questions there. But staying on the QB. So obviously the Penix thing's going. We stick and pick with Byron Murphy, and then we got to sit and like I remember Greg Bell said, you pretty much John Snyder's sitting and playing pickup sticks, right? That was kind of the thing, right? Because you got a long time to wait. Now, obviously, you're not just sitting there. You're working the phones and you're busy as hell in that war room, but. So then, there's a couple of guys that we talked about. Obviously, Spencer Rattler was one of the big names that, obviously, was a guy that was projected to go ahead, say, ahead of a Jordan Travis or Michael Pratt that you were high on. But man, like Rattler sat, and we're going to touch on some of the other guys in a second, but we got into the 4th round and I think you and I were like, is it Spencer Rattler time? He came in for a 30 visit. I look at it like, I know John came out and said what he said. They're high on Howell, but you know what? You can bring a guy in and maybe they just weren't sold on Rattler, meeting with them and doing all that kind of stuff. I mean, he could have been just obviously just wasn't on the radar at that time, or they feel like we don't see him as a future franchise guy. That's kind of how I looked at it. And then same with the other guys. What was how do you kind of look at that and how we just obviously you remember the narrative, John saying, hey, I've drafted 2 quarterbacks in 14 years.
Yeah.
What are you seeing overall? Like, are you okay with him now when, now that the dust is settled and you've had some time to think about it? Are you okay now that they didn't draft a QB and we're obviously going to either kick that can down the road next year or we might not even do it next year? What's your thoughts on all that?
So between when we had our last show and the draft, I did a lot of watching of Sam Howell tape. I went and watched him back in his first 3 years at UNC, last year at Washington, and a couple things came home to me. And I know there's been a couple guys we've had on here that were higher than I was on Sam Howell. I looked at Sam Howell as a starter, yes, but I didn't look at him as a high upside starter.
Right.
The more I watch Sam Howell and the more I think with him being with this group of individuals in this coaching staff, Sam Howell last year got a really raw deal in Washington. They didn't really have a great staff in place around him. What they asked him to do as essentially a rookie quarterback playing for a full season. They didn't complement his skill set. You look at what we did when we had Russell his first couple of years. We ran the ball, play action pass. We did a lot. They didn't do that really. They abandoned their run game in Washington, which still to me this day shocks me. With the running backs they had in Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. But so when I watched more of Sam Howell, what I came away from is if I'm sitting there, in the 4th round, the 5th round, when we were talking like, hey, do they take somebody? Is there someone they want to take? Is that guy going to come in and be better than Sam Howell is right now or in the future? Do they project out that he's going to beat out Sam Howell?
Right.
I don't think there's anybody in that room in the draft after the top 6 went that you can say confidently, yeah, we bring in Spencer Rattler. He's going to be an immediate upgrade over Sam Howell in a year or 2. Like we've got him for 2 years, right?
Right.
So when you're looking at that, that's where I think the decision got made. Like maybe we'll get a guy later on if we like someone in the 6th and throw some, putty at the wall and see if it sticks. But that's why I look like they've added a couple guys, obviously in the UDFA class. But
Yeah.
I honestly think they really do view Sam Howell as potentially a QB of the future. And as much was said by John at the end of his press conference on day 3 to wrap up the draft, I believe it was Greg Bell that asked, I could be wrong, but I believe it was, asked about what the long-term plan was. And apparently the reaction from John was he was kind of irked by the question and then basically made the statement, and I'll pull it up and I'll read it off so everyone knows what it was. But it essentially was, hold on here, let me find it. When Greg asked John Schneider what Seahawks' long-term plan is at QB beyond 2025, he stated, "We just traded for Sam Howell. He's got 2 years left on his contract. Gino's here. We have a really cool room right now. Sam is a huge part of it because we made a major trade to get Sam." And so when you think about what they did with that trade, Sam Howell is the equivalent of a 4th-round pick, where we were talking about Rattler, Michael Pratt, Jordan Travis, even, guys like a Devin Leary maybe, from 4th round down to the end of the draft. So I honestly believe that they really do view Sam Howell as the QB of the future. And they're, how we kept talking about kicking the can next year. I think there's a good chance they kick this can maybe to 2027.
Well, that's how I'm sort of feeling right now as well. I agree with you in that. And you know what? Yeah, I mean, Sam, like you said, Sam can play. It's just like you said, raw deal last year in Washington. The way he was used, and right away people are going to pin him on all the picks, and not that but you're dealing with a young guy, right? Like starts pretty much all games last year, I think, right? Like so, and played pretty good against us, man. Like you said, you went back and watched a lot of film, and you're dealing with a young dude. So yeah, I mean, and here's the other thing, and I know we've gone back and forth on this. It's not easy to just draft a quarterback that's going to be your future franchise guy. Like, even if you look at the 6 of the top 6 out of 12 guys that were picked and were quarterbacks, it's all a crapshoot still. It's not like, oh, hey, all these franchises got their guy for the next 7-8 years. Man, if history, is any indication, if you and me were just going to play a guessing game, maybe 2 guys, just based on just numbers. Like, I don't know, JJ McCarthy, who knows? Even Caleb Williams, who knows? Like, I'm a big organizational guy. Chicago isn't like the premier organization for like not screwing up quarterbacks. Like Justin Fields kind of just got kicked to the curb. And so like I'm rooting for Caleb. I think it's cool, the supporting cast of receivers he has and all this kind of stuff. But I'm not gonna mortgage the house on it. Like, it's like I don't know. So it's even at a top 2-3 pick, you don't know. So you got a guy that gave up a like you said, where they gave the pick they gave up would be equivalent to who was left, and you think, hey, and this guy's already auditioned in the NFL. You know what? Who's to say he can't be the next guy if he takes those strides?
Well, we got to look at it. What did everyone think of Gino when we handed him the job 2 years ago?
Right.
Gino had sat for 7 years, and he was this washout, and he didn't work out in New York, and he's been a backup, and he got an opportunity to come and sit and learn, and he turned out to be a plus starter. Sam Howell, I think, has, in some respects, more talent, and he's a little bit more athletic. Him sitting a year and learning everything and competing, I really think Sam could be something, and I really encourage our listeners to go and watch Sam Howell his first 2 years at North Carolina.
Yeah.
What people don't understand is his first 2 years, if he had come out, if he could have after his second year, he would have been a top 10 pick in the NFL draft.
Right.
His third year, all of his NFL talent left, and they completely restructured that offense from a spread passing game into a spread running attack. And he had to use his legs more than anything his third year. And his passing numbers went down because he didn't have the talent.
Right.
Affects his NFL stock when it comes to draft time at that point. If he had stayed another year, maybe, and then some receivers had shown up and he was able to throw the ball, we're looking at a guy that could have gone again in the top echelon of the draft in rounds. But I think we all also have to remember when we won our Super Bowl, because that's what we're all geared toward, is how do we get back to that Super Bowl? Russell wasn't a superstar yet. Russell was still on year 2. Russell was still making mistakes halfway through. I think it was the third quarter point of that year. Russell was in a bad slump. We had lost the 49ers in Santa Clara. Our offense wasn't doing well. And we got to remember, like, Russell wasn't the Russell we saw throwing 35 touchdowns. Russell, I think, in his second year only threw 25 or 26 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He was a game manager. He
Mhm.
handed the ball to Marshawn and would take his shots. If you build a team around a quarterback and you don't ask him to do everything, you have a pretty good shot at getting yourselves pretty deep in the playoffs. And then, yes, you do have to have a quarterback that can make you the odd play here and there to win a game. You ask Sam Howell to make, or Geno Smith maybe, to make 3 plays in a game. Hey, I need you to make 3 crucial throws. Instead of saying, hey, I need you to make 15 crucial throws. Your percentage of winning there and success goes up drastically.
Well, and we're seeing it right in our own division with Brock Purdy, and I think Russell Wilson definitely has more talent than Brock has or ever will, but they just went to a Super Bowl, right? And like you said, he's not making mistakes. He's asked to make plays sometimes when he needs to, and he's proven me wrong. He's fit in some tight windows. He's made some throws. He's shown a little athleticism. He gets out of the pocket and he can run a little bit, like kind of what you just need him to do, because they've assembled such a great team. Like, you get a Caleb Williams and you throw him in a dumpster fire. And obviously they're trying to build something there, and I like some of the guys that they've got, and obviously, but it's not a magic pill, and sometimes, like you and I have talked about, 24 is a building block. Get as many good players. We talk to guys like Danby and some other guys. Draft good players that are impact dudes, blue chip guys, Devin Witherspoon, Byron Murphy, these young guys that now you build this foundation. And then, like we did back in the Super Bowl run, you sign the Michael Bennett's, right? Okay, now it's time to bring in a couple of pieces that, we just need these veterans or guys who can ball. Okay, we're going to add this and add that, but we have our foundation of young guys, like when we had the Legion of Boom. Obviously, we're not comparing. There's not a Legion Boom 2.0, but the fact of how we're using this year to build, and we're going to compete. And that's why Sam is there. And it is intriguing that here's a guy, like you said, you bring the point. I'm a big believer of sitting and learning the system and just getting experience. They don't need to throw Sam in right now. Like, if he has to have like just an amazing camp, like or either Geno's just terrible, which I don't see. He just has to be like, it's Geno's job. I think, like you said, let him sit a year and let him just like hone it all in. So I agree, man. I mean, and that's why these guys are here. That's why John's John and on all this. But, so I think I'm, like, as the dust settled for myself, you look at that and you start looking at it differently too, and say, okay, you know what? Yeah, Spencer Rattler would be kind of cool, but how much better are you going to be as a franchise? Is this guy going to be the guy? And if the answer is I don't know, then you move on and you have 2 guys in place, and you keep trying to bring in guys. You bring in depth guys, like we're going to touch on. So
I got one more piece to add to this, Ryan. Just one more little piece. So Mike McDonald's finally talked about Sam Howell at the end thing, and he goes, "I'm impressed with Sam, with how he operates. We're building the offensive flow. The whole playbook's not in, but his command of the huddle is what impresses me the most. He obviously can spin it out there. That's easy to see. I'm just getting used to his personality. I think he's blossoming a little bit more. The personality's starting to come out, but I'm really excited about him. Like John, it's a cool combination of guys. It's early, but the returns are very positive." And there was a thing that got put out before about part of the reason why they didn't want Sam in Washington anymore had nothing to do with place. It was his personality as being an alpha. Like, he wants to play. He's going to push himself to play.
Good.
You bring in a rookie quarterback, and Sam's going to look at that and go, I'm competing with you. I'm not just going to let you take my job.
No.
And then we've got to think, too, who were the 2 teams that went after him that we outbid for, which they've alluded to multiple times? Sean Payton in Denver.
Right.
And Sean McVay in LA.
Right.
Those are 2 guys. I think that's a pretty glowing recommendation of, If those two guys are interested in a guy and are pushing to get him, and we had to give up what we did, I think I'd rather see Sam Howell in the blue and green than in blue and yellow kicking our ass possibly when Stafford retires.
Yeah, and I agree with all that. And you know what? That's the thing. And you and I, just to make sure everyone's clear, we're pro Sam. Like
Yep.
I love that he's in the building, and I think it's a huge upgrade over Drew Lock.
And we
And
love Geno too.
And we love Geno. We were just thinking, we're looking the future. Now, if they think, hey, this guy could be, like I mentioned just a few minutes ago, it's not like you can just snap your fingers and be like, yeah, we got a top 5, top 10 pick. You know, like let's say they tank, and they're not gonna. You don't automatically guarantee you get anything as far as a franchise guy. So they're looking at like, let's build it up. We see a lot of good things from Sam. And if it works out, it works out. If not, like you said, maybe that can gets kicked to 26. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? In the next couple of years, they may not even go after a guy, unless that class just gets so much better, because obviously it's not the highest regarded class. So yeah, so moving on, let's kind of work our way down and then look at some of the guy. Obviously Brian Murphy we talked about. Then at 81, we do sit. There was talks. Do they get back in like this? Do they try to get back in like the second round? But then you and I were like, well, they're going to give up a lot of capital, so they sit at 81, and they pick up Christian Haynes out of Connecticut. Man, like another guy that sort of just fell to us where he was. Man, how excited are you with this pick, and especially at 81?
Here, I'm going to do something, Ryan. I'm going to bring up the selection so our viewers can see that, just so they understand what we're talking about and who went where.
Okay.
So give me 1 second here. I'll bring that up. And yeah, there we go. So, honestly, I look at that Christian Haynes. That's an A, man. That is a A. Like we were banging the table about we need interior help. We need a guard. We get in Lincoln Tomlinson. Okay, well, we still need a guard. Like we're not, how many times do we do mocks and see comments of you guys didn't go with a guard in the first 2 rounds? What are you doing? Like that's one of our biggest needs. Well, they were able to sit, and like I've added into our chart here for the draft class, our second round pick was Leonard Williams.
Yeah,
you weren't going to get another guy in the second round that was better than Leonard Williams.
No.
Now we get, Christian Haynes. Christian Haynes is plug in, and he is going to start. I don't know if that means he beats out Lincoln Tomlinson for the left guard spot or he beats out Anthony Bradford on the right side. But that guy on most analyst boards was ranked as either number 1 or number 2 for guards.
Yeah. So and
like,
you get
and
that
pure
late.
Guard. That's not tackle 2 guard like Fatanu or Graham Hardy. This is pure guard. And you were able to get him at pick, 81 in the 3rd round.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. You and me, I think, mentioned we had Dan on. We went live, and we're like, how? When was the last time you guys got excited for like a number 81 pick? Like, obviously, you're interested to see what we get, but we're like, man, there was just so many good players available, and like guys that could fit what we needed, and we were all excited when they took Haynes at 81. So we all agreed I mean, you and I, that's an A plus, especially where you got him. He's a plug and play guy. So you just address, like you said, look at the first 2 guys, D tackles, like you said. Sure, Williams is 30. He's still in his prime, and you got him for 3 years. So that's better than anything else. Like you are like we didn't have Leonard Williams being last year, so you're going into camp now with Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy. To get in there and have Draymond in there and let's do something there like that. That to me is exciting. And then to get Haynes, I mean, amazing, right? So then we had what, number 102 in the next.
And we traded.
We traded. So we were all thinking again, was this a quarterback situation? And so they go, and obviously linebacker was a need that we talked about. Okay, you signed the 2 guys. We need a young guy to compete. Maybe one guy gets extended, but you needed a young guy. They pick up Tyrese Knight. Like, interesting pick. I've seen some guys not the biggest fan of that pick. And you had like Trotter still out there. But what's your thought? I mean, I'll say this, that, when I take a step back and think about it, you're dealing with a guy like Mike McDonald, who is defensive minded, like wants to mold linebackers. Just had one in Patrick Queen that a lot of people said he's the reason that Patrick Queen sort of like, stepped it up. So it's hard for me to say not a good pick. It's an interesting pick. They must see something there. What are your thoughts of the pick? When you had maybe another guy, a couple other guys on the board there.
For me, when they traded back, I kind of went, like, are we going to miss a little bit? And it kind of affects my overall grade for this. I think there were some guys they missed out on. Tyrese Knight, I think part of this was where they realized that they were going to be ahead of the curve on him before the linebacker run started a little bit more.
Right.
They had him in. The one thing about Tyrese Knight that I've heard, he's a really intelligent linebacker, flies to the ball, instinctual, hits everything that moves. And that's kind of also his downfall a little bit, is he sometimes gets caught out of position on play action and misdirection stuff.
Right.
But we're talking, like you said, about a coach that has coached up linebackers. Until Mike McDonald showed up in Baltimore, everyone was saying Patrick Queen was a bust.
Yeah.
Now Patrick Queen's in Pittsburgh with massive amounts of money in his bank account because of his couple years under Mike McDonald. So bring in a guy that doesn't have to play right away, right? He doesn't have to. He can sit behind Dotson and Baker. Learn the ropes, kind of go through it. I think Tyrese Knight could end up being a, good starting linebacker plus starting linebacker.
Right. Yeah. No, that's the thing. Like you said, that's Mike McDowell's forte. So it was funny though, too. Like apparently John couldn't even get a hold of him there. Did you see that? When
he was out in the middle of nowhere. Couldn't get a hold of him.
So he said, and guys were like, man, maybe not the best time to be in the middle of nowhere on draft day.
Yeah,
right?
no kidding, right?
But kind of funny. And then so then we moved down. You got Sam Howell right there in round 4. So if you look at this, right, and it's because we literally just picked him up like 6-ish weeks ago. So
and there are guys in this draft class that are older than he is.
So then when you look at it and you say, okay, we started the draft a little early. Sam Howell, like if Sam Howell was like literally in this draft and you picked him where he is here, you would be pretty happy about that. Like you said, okay, who would you rather have, Sam Howell or Rattler, right? So, you have Sam there. And so if you break it down for the first 5 guys, that's looking pretty impressive, man. We moved down another need that you and I talked about. They needed another tight end. You get a young guy, you get a guy like Parkinson's exited. You pick up AJ Barner out of Michigan.
I love AJ Barner.
Kid. I love him too. Yeah, he's just like, do whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. He can do it all, right? What's your overall take on Barner?
Well, if you remember, we did our mock with Dan on his show. I wanted AJ Barner in that draft. Right. I was banging the table. I think he's the, out of Wiley and some of those other guys, I think he was the most complete tight end.
Yeah.
And I think, again, they were a little ahead of the curve on tight ends, but
yeah,
I think AJ Barner comes in and fills a role. He's good on specials, so he's going to contribute there immediately. But he can catch. He has really good receiving skills. And I don't think they were utilized all that well at Michigan because their offense didn't really call for it.
Yeah.
And he's a hell of a blocker. Like he will engage and dig in there and anchor well. So no, I think this was a really, really good pick. And you're going to get him again for 4 years.
Yeah.
So you think about the Will Dissly trade-off, right? We signed Will Dissly to that big deal and let him walk away after the second year of it.
Right.
We signed AJ Barner for almost less than what they're paying, or I think it is for less than what they're paying him in LA even now. I would rather have AJ Barner than Will Dissly.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like you said, like Parkinson was a guy that we were sort of sad to see leave, but now you have this guy step in. And it's, because you still got, like, honestly, the most talented dude out of those 3 was Noah Fant that we signed. And now being in that grub offense, it just seems like a good fit. You bring in this guy, you just can do all sorts of things. So I agree. I love the pick. Yeah. So, I mean, it's so far on paper, the draft just looks really, really good. Then you get down, obviously you got round 5, round 6, we made a trade earlier with Denver. So we picked up some picks.
We love trading with them, eh?
I don't know why they love trading with us, but
kidding, right?
we
they would have learned the first time.
Yeah, man. I mean, who knows who's behind that? But so then you go. So some people might be like, okay, now, and we'll touch on the other guy, but we picked up two cornerbacks in this draft, both at Auburn. First guy, I don't want to botch his name, but Pritchett out of Auburn corner. So people are thinking, okay, why are we picking up corners? Well, if you look at it, there's only a couple of guys that are signed beyond 24. So after this season, you are left with Devin Witherspoon, obviously a stud.
Mhm.
Uh, Correct me if I'm wrong, and then Reek,
Yep,
and I think that's it.
that's it.
So you are like, now you either, if so you're in round 5, you get someone, a a a guy this deep in the draft that you can say, okay, we're bringing him in, and you look at a situation where your corner room's deep this year, so you got two guys you can sort of bring in this year and see what you got, and then instead of being like, okay, now we got to definitely get a corner in next year's draft. So what do you know about Pritchett, man? And like, how do you like him, where we got him, and
So Pritchett, I actually like again, I think what people have to understand around 5 to 6, you're kind of drafting for best player available. And sometimes
yeah,
you look at it and go, well, that's not a need for us. Well, your needs are addressed above. Like if you really think about it, our biggest needs were D tackle, guard, and a linebacker and even a quarterback. So we kind of addressed that earlier on in the draft. Naheem Pritchett, like again, good SEC corner. He's got some issues. He's a little raw and he needs some work, but he's got some wicked speed, man. Like I think he's a
oh yeah,
4.3 guy.
or
He's got
three or
some kick
something like that. Right?
return experience. So I really like this pick. I think this was good, a good spot to start addressing some of your future needs per se with depth in the roster. Because again, this is where you're getting guys that are going to come in and be depth pieces. So
Yeah.
getting him and DJ James, the other Auburn corner, like
Yeah.
DJ James, a lot of people had him with a 4th-round grade, right?
Wow.
Like they
Yeah.
had him higher up there and he slipped. So I think they've got good value at both those corner picks.
I agree, man. And I just, like I said, like you brought up Mike Jackson and just guys that you're like, okay, you know what? There might be a guy, and you know what? Maybe someone pushes Reek. That's the thing. Like we talked about, I really just think there's one guaranteed corner spot right now, and that's obviously Witherspoon. So yeah, and then we double up on guard again, right? So obviously, people are screaming for interior offensive linemen and all this kind of stuff. You go round 6, obviously best player available and depth pieces. Man, what can you tell everybody about this kid?
So the guard we got here in the 6th round, I'm gonna butcher his name, I swear, but I'm gonna give it a shot. I think it's Satua Lahumehi or Meha. The kid from Utah, he's a stud, man. Little raw, but he is a stud. I honestly think this might be one of the steals of the draft. He had a 3rd to 4th round grade on him.
Wow.
So I could very well see them coming out of camp with an O-line. If he works at his stuff and works with Coach Huff there in the O-line, I could see it where we got Olu, we've got Satua, Christian Haynes inside, and then
Yeah.
Cross and Lucas on the outside.
Wow.
Like that, I could see that being our O-line this year because
Wow.
these two guards that we picked up are solid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you get a guy like that late in the draft, man. Yeah, that's exciting. If you had two dudes in this draft, one really late as a potential starter like that, that's exciting to hear, man. So, and then you sort of touch on DJ James, and then rounding it off, we didn't have a 7th, we got rid of that. So we our final pick in round 6 was Michael Jarrell.
Yep.
So offensive tackle, obviously another depth piece. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know much about him. What do you know about him?
So I don't know a lot, but I know they had him in for a visit. Comes from a smaller school, but at the Ohio State Pro Day, he apparently looked pretty good dealing with bigger guys from the bigger schools. He's going to be a project guy, but I look at him as a bit more coming out of a more polished George Fant. I think he has a higher upside than George Fant does at what he is, but he's a guy I think that could be a very good swing tackle for us.
Right.
So
Yeah, man. So
that's our draft class.
there's your class, man. It was, a lot of anticipation leading up to this draft. Mike McDonald, first year head coach. John Schneider, first year on his own without Pete. So, what was he going to do? What influence was Mike going to have? You look at it overall, they really addressed all their needs when you think about it, aside from quarterback. But obviously, you and I touched on for about 20 minutes there how the plan for how they figured, no, you know what, we did address that, and that was just 6 weeks earlier. Everybody just slow down right now. We're building this thing up. We're going to be totally fine in that position. And if these guards work out, this interior gets a little better, everybody might be a little surprised how much better, say, Gino is playing there under center. So that's gonna be just, so we're gonna touch on the UDFAs in a second. Give me your overall grade on this draft.
I give this overall grade probably a B plus.
Okay.
There were some things in day 3 where I think they might have been able to get different players if they hadn't have made that trade. But day 1 and day 2, I think, are A's, and I would say day 3 is a B. So when I average it all out, I get B plus.
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. I think yeah, you get down to that day 3 and stuff like that. It's tough, but like you said, you sort of look at guys that are available and guys that you might have passed on, and that's totally fair. I think day 1, man, without a doubt, like definitely an AA plus. Just what you did. You didn't mess around. You didn't get cute. You went after the trenches and good dudes. Like you're like, these are plug and play, and one of these guys could be a potential blue chipper. So yeah, it just no messing around. You gotta love it. Like you mentioned, just like last year, Devin Witherspoon, JSN. Like we're not messing around. We're not trading around. We're not gonna get cute. These guys are impact dudes. We're bringing them in. They're gonna make a difference. So yeah. For me, I tend to agree with that, man. So overall, like good, really good draft. And like you said, you put in Leonard Williams in that list and Sam Howell. Like when you put it in perspective, that list looks pretty good, man.
Oh, it does, man. It looks like a solid draft. You addressed a lot of the needs, and I think it sets the foundation up for a good 2024 season with possible, maybe they get 1-2 more wins than they did last year because of some of the guys they were able to pick up this year in the draft. I'm not guaranteeing that, but I think it could. But you're setting yourselves up for a very successful, I think, 2025 and moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, if they got 11 wins, you'd have to be really happy as a Seahawks fan. And there's no reason why that wouldn't be on the table. So yeah, man, overall, I think we're excited. Let's touch on the UDFA class of 24 here for Seattle. Name that sticks out: Jack Westor, University of Washington. Who are you seeing this list? Are you kind of excited about anybody?
There's some guys I am excited about. The quarterback that they picked up, I don't even want to try and pronounce his last name because I think I might butcher it.
Right.
Siobhan, but he's got some good mechanics. I've watched some stuff on him. O-line was a big issue at San Jose State, but he looks like he could be a guy that you want to keep and develop on your practice squad. Garrett Greenfield from South Dakota. I think he's another really good player that could potentially come in and be maybe a tackle for us and back up Abe Lucas. The one guy, and the other one I'd say is the running back there, Holani from Boise. He can push Kenny, like really could push Kenny McIntosh for that third role. And then the other guy is Hayden Haddon. That dude, one of the guys from 12th Man Rising wrote an article, I think, or mentioned him and said he is a poor man's version of Cooper Kupp. Wow. I'm okay with having a poor man's version of Cooper Kupp be my 4th or 5th receiver.
Anything Cooper Kupp, you wouldn't mind having around.
Yeah.
Like
so
whatever
like,
you want to call it.
These guys, I think there's, definitely, and there's been a couple guys that have been added since I was able to create this list late last night. So I know they've invited Tua Tagovailoa's younger brother.
I saw that.
They've invited him to the rookie mini camp. So again, I think this could be really, really, really interesting to see how this all shapes up and goes going forward. And you got to look at Seattle's history. They've got a pretty good history with UDFAs. Like Doug
They do.
Baldwin was a
They-
UDFA. There's been a few different guys that made this team that were UDFAs. Jermaine
Yeah.
Hurt is
Jermaine
another
Hurt.
one.
Yeah, a couple receivers, man. A couple all-time. Well, Doug, an all-time great here in Seattle. Like that's the thing. We got a history of UDFA. So, don't sleep on the UDFA list. That's the thing. Like, people are like, oh man, you kind of look at the draft. Yeah, but you get some of these UDFAs, you just don't know they get in the right situation, the right system. I mean, they can emerge. There's a couple of guys that could emerge. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Like just notables that you just listed off that you want to watch when camp fires up and everything, and kind of see where we're at there. But yeah, man, I'm just super excited about, man, like that first round, dude. Like you just couldn't have asked for a better situation, the way players were just falling to you. So I know I said it again, and it's just you get you pumped up when you think, I'll touch on this when you think of what that interior, that defensive line could be, run stuffers and just getting back to Seattle. This goes back to like when we were talking about who could be the new head coach, Ben Johnson, and all it. If you look at it now, and we sort of been like, no, wait a second, we got to get back to defense and stopping McVay and Shanahan. Like you could have, like honestly, if you went Ben Johnson road and you had this dynamic on it, well, we know we have good offensive players, and now you have a guy like Ryan Grove. You can't just continue on to be a crap run defense and all this kind of stuff. And so I don't know. It would have been interesting to see what kind of staff Ben assembled if he was the guy, if he went really offensive mind. Now, and then when they went Mike, you're like, okay, they have a plan to really fix this D. And like you get excited about that because you got good players on the other side of the ball. And now a guy like Ryan Grubb, you kind of feel like the offense will sort of take care of itself in a way. But you need a guy to be like, no, we're doing it my way on D, and
Yeah.
we're gonna be a bunch of killers out there. And these are the guys I want to get the job done. And Byron Murphy, prime example.
No, and exactly. Byron Murphy is going to set the tone. So is Christian Haynes. They're going to be
Yeah.
guys that are really going to, set the tone for this. And the thing that's really interesting is Mike McDonald said something. I'm just trying to find it for our listeners right now. And it really spoke to me on the culture shift. I think that, not that there is a huge one, but one that definitely I think is going to make a big thing. And here it is. Sorry. John Boyle is the one that actually put it out. But Mike McDonald on Seahawks' first two picks. I want a style of play that no one wants to play. That's what we're aiming for. That's a standard of how we play football. And if you want to play here, you're going to have to play a certain way. Those are the types of guys we're bringing in.
Yeah.
So you're bringing a guy now, and not that Pete didn't, but that to me is the first time I've heard it in a long time that we are done getting bullied by the Niners, by the Rams. We are now going to bully you back. We're going to hit you in the mouth. And Byron Murphy, Christian Haynes, some of these guys that they have picked up, keeping Leonard Williams, like they are coming to now punch you in the mouth. They're tired of getting the shots given to them. They want to go back to where they were, which was being, and we've heard it for years, we want to be the bullies again. When that Legion of Boom team was here, they were the bullies. No one wanted to come into Seattle or even play Seattle for that matter anywhere. We bullied the Broncos in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We truly did. It was completely a dominating game.
Off the start.
But that was being the bully. And I think that's what Mike McDonald wants this team to be. He wants these guys to come here with their lunch pails. Like the coolest thing I saw was that the entire coaching staff in there that was part of the draft on day 3 had the mechanic shirts on. I want to figure out where to get one of those because they're awesome. Yeah. But it's that mentality of lunch pail work, blue collar, go get it done. That's something I think that's coming back to Seattle that's been missing for a long time.
I agree, and I love it. I love everything about it. I'm just excited now, man, to just get going and just, get on the field. You know what? Real quick, because I didn't say it before, guys, if you like what you're hearing with myself and Bryce, go down, hit that subscribe button, like button, and the notification button, so you don't miss any future episodes. And we're gonna have some more draft recap stuff. We're gonna have guys like Rob Staten back on the show, just guys that really can just add to what we've talked about tonight and just really give their insight. And so we got some good episodes coming up in up coming up in May, and so you're not going to want to miss that. And like I said, everyone who's been subscribing and following and commenting, man, we really appreciate it. And yeah, so yeah, man, I don't know anything else to add, man. Like that to me, I'm excited. I'm pumped. I think we came out of it really good.
No, I think we did too. And the one thing I will say is I think everyone needs to do three things. Understand that we're in a new era now with Mike McDonald, and there's going to be a new way this team does things, and we got to get rid of the how things have been. This is the building block draft. This draft they need to build on next year. And the other thing is the NFC West as a whole got a hell of a lot better this weekend. The Cardinals, the Rams, and the Niners all drafted well. This is going to go back to being a dogfight division where there's nothing easy up for grabs anymore. No one's an easy win.
No, you're right. And even the Cardinals showed that even last year, right? That they weren't a pushover and they were just changing that culture now after this draft, and they're just going to keep building too. So, yeah, man, definitely a division that NFL fans want to keep an eye on because this is going to get really tough and a really good division. So, yeah, man. So that's all we got for you guys tonight. Great draft. And we are going to catch you guys on the next episode.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.